We can speak now to Professor of Economics at the University of Lille, Alexandre Delègue. Mr. Delègue, thanks for your time. Looking at the Olympic Games, they've been delayed before. Deciding whether or not to delay or even cancel them at this stage is, as much as anything else, a big question when it comes to finance, isn't it? Can you give us an idea of just how big a question that is?
Oh, well, the initial budget for the Games, which was already pretty high, was about $13 billion. And the delay of last year, delaying 1 year, increased this cost by 25%. So it led to a budget of $3 billion more. So you can imagine that delaying again would still mean even more costs. But the situation is pretty dire. Already, the Japanese government and organizations say that they won't receive foreign visitors for the Games, which is, of course, a big source of revenue. Already, the economic equation is pretty bad, but delaying again would be extremely costly and extremely difficult for the Japanese authorities.
At this point, do you think they should simply cancel the 2021 Games as they were and wait for the next ones in a couple of years' time?
Oh, well, this is a decision that, of course, I'm not going to make in their situation. But right now, well, they have already a lot of sunk costs. You know, all the costs that they have paid all the costs. So right now, taking the Games would probably be less costly in terms of image. But if you think, you know, more generally, you would say that canceling the game would, or maybe delaying them again, might be a better solution. But it's a very difficult decision to take in terms of, public humiliation. It would be probably terrible for the Japanese authorities. At the same moment, probably it will even not be possible for Japanese spectators, given today's epidemic conditions in Japan, to be to the Games. So the profits from organizing the Games will be very low. So I think the Games in the end will have to take place, and it will be a tremendous cost for Japan.
I guess at this point, maybe a lot of people looking at the longer future, if you like, of those Olympic committees. You know, the Japanese Olympic Committee, I imagine, will need some help financially going forward. You're saying there, you know, already the lack of audience being a big financial blow. On the longer term, given this negative press, if you like, and this negative impact of a virus on the Olympic Games, do you think it will have a longer term impact on the Games?
Definitely, yes, because there was already a trend that we have seen with the Paris and Los Angeles Games that less and less cities are willing to go and organize the Games because the costs have gone up very, very much. And many people realize that the cost benefit is not there. The profit is not enough to compensate for costs that are skyrocketing. And so this is why you know that the procedure that gave the Games to Paris and Los Angeles was with much less competition. So I guess that with the situation in Japan, every city is going to realize that the equation is even worse, because we see that already it was not great. The Japanese Games are extremely expensive and we're ready, it would not be very profitable. But we see that if there is an accident, which we can call COVID a sort of economic accident, these accidents create something which was already bad and make it even worse. So my guess is that in the future, the movement towards higher costs and more cities wanting to bear this cost, which was already had been stopped, it will again push even more in a direction where this system has to change. And this system will probably change. We don't exactly know. There are lots of potential reforms, but I guess that the trend we have seen since the 1980s with even more and more expensive games and more spending by cities, this trend, which was already stopping, is probably going to stop definitely right now.
Interesting.
In the future.
Interesting. On a slightly different note, just before we leave you, we're seeing, you know, a lot of countries, notably here in Europe, starting to lift lockdown restrictions now when it comes to COVID-19, despite the fact that we still have very high rates of infections. Do you think that, you know, over a year into this pandemic, that basically from a financial front, they have no other choice now but to lift lockdowns?
I think, again, if we look at the cost benefit of lockdowns, it's less and less efficient because, you know, lockdowns work, but they work as a sort of hammer. if you have a lockdown for a short period of time, it might work to lower infections. But the more and more you have restrictions, the more and more these restrictions are either people find ways around these restrictions or just can't bear them anymore. From where I stand here, we see more and more movements of people who just want, young people especially, who just want to go out. So the equation for lockdowns is less and less efficient. The cost is going higher and higher because for public finances, for businesses who can't work, and the benefits in terms of health are lower and lower because people don't want to go out. So I think that, again, even though we look at governments and we want them to do something, but there is little they can do with stricter and stricter lockdowns in terms of health benefits, and the costs are even go higher and higher. So even though we always can discuss, but I think that this movement is a bit unavoidable. More and more lockdowns and more costs with low health benefits. The only thing that works in terms of health benefits is vaccination. So you can discuss on the details, but I think this movement is a bit unavoidable in terms of costs and benefits for Europe, in the situation where there are vaccines, of course.
Alexander Leleg, Professor of Economics at the University of Lille, thanks so much for your time.